Hi, I'm Rachel Lancaster, and this is the Magnificent Midlife podcast. This is where we celebrate women in midlife and beyond. We challenge the status quo and bash those negative stereotypes about being an older woman. We're not over the hill at 40, 50, 60. We're just getting started. And the world needs us now more than ever. I'll be talking all things midlife, about issues that matter, and sharing fabulous stories of amazing women doing very cool stuff. Now's our time. My guest today is Karen Arthur. Karen is an educator, a fashion designer, a dancer and a podcaster, amongst many other things. Last year, she set up her Menopause Whilst Black podcast to amplify Black women's voices in menopause. I'm delighted to welcome her to this podcast. Welcome, Karen. It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And I would like to kick off by asking you, why did you feel this need to set up your podcast?
I didn't feel the need. It goes back to last year. We were in COVID, as you know, we were in lockdown. I had brought as you know, I'm a fashion designer, and my clients were on hold, so I managed to bring my sewing machine home to my kitchen table, which is where I started sewing over 20 years ago. I was making face covers, like most people who can sew. I was making face covers, and out of the scrap fabric that I have from my business. I was feeling isolated and agitated and anxious about, what was happening with COVID. The government wasn't helping, And in the middle of that, as you know, several things happened, but the one that stands out, I suppose, that was the catalyst was when George Floyd was murdered by police in America. And I felt frustrated, I felt angry, like most people I know. The Black Lives Matter movement becoming global was, whilst in some senses it was welcome, it also produced a lot of performative action. And I honestly wondered how Black menopausal women were dealing with COVID, menopause, racism, and seeing these images and having this trauma revisited on the news all over the place. I never watched the video, but I happened to see that image, and I had nightmares about it. It stays in my head. It still stays in my head. So I went quiet for a while because I hang out a lot on Instagram, and on Instagram, a lot of Black accounts had suddenly gained a lot of followers overnight in a bid to diversify feeds and things like that. And it felt intrusive. We were here all the time. And it felt like people were just ticking boxes, really. And in some senses, that's played out because a lot of those followers have gone. So I went quiet for a bit, and I concentrated on checking my family were okay, checking my friends were okay, and sewing. And then I decided to record a video because I wanted to know why the menopause landscape was so white, so pale. If you Google menopause and you click images, you will find a sea of either coloured in infographics, so you get like different shades of people, of women. You get very sad white women with their heads in their hands. You get a lot of lavender for some reason. I don't know why that colour shows.
Fanning, white women fanning.
And I just thought it didn't represent. Doesn't show anybody who looks like me. It doesn't, but it also doesn't show the vibrance of growing older. So I did this video and I put it on Instagram, and people got it. And then I decided to do a survey because there is no research into how menopause affects Black women specifically. The research I found was based in the US. It lumped black women and Hispanic women together often. And it talked about black women often reaching menopause up to 2 years earlier and suffering more severely from hot flushes. I thought, well, if that's the case, why isn't that common knowledge? And UK research is old. It's from 2007. So I thought I was looking in the wrong place. I thought some other person with, degrees coming out their bum would have done this research. But it doesn't exist. And so I did my own survey and I thought 50 people would fill it in. I asked black UK menopausal or perimenopausal women to fill in the research. And in the end, I closed it at 235. And I asked lots of generic questions, but also one of the questions I asked was, who are you going to for your knowledge, your menopause knowledge? Who is specifically telling stories about black UK women? What is needed? And everybody was saying there needs to be a podcast. There needs to be some kind of, storytelling. And even then I was like, oh, I'm a fashion designer. I don't do that. I don't know how to do a podcast. I haven't got the stuff. I don't know how to do things. But I've always been someone who, if I don't see something, or if someone's taken their time doing something, I end up just doing it myself. It's just quicker. And so that's why I started the podcast. And yeah, I've had no shortage of women now wanting to come on and talk. I worried about where I was going to find guests from. But it's just basically that black women aren't in the media telling people their age and telling people that they're menopausal. It's not encouraged. There's a lot of menopausal talk now. You can't swing a cat without, it hitting menopause, so to speak. But it is still lacking in diversity, whether it's South Asian women, whether it's, from lots of different cultures. And I happen to be interested in black UK women because I'm a black woman from the UK. That's it.
And cultural differences make all the difference, don't they, to menopausal experiences? I mean, that's certainly what my research has led me to, that we all have a different experience of it, but where we live in the world and our ethnicity can have a huge impact on what it's like.
I think the reason that women are so interested, all sorts of women, by the way, and men, is that we were here all the time. I go through these waves of emotion around the fact that, yeah, it's great that I'm doing this, but should have been done a long time ago. It's great that, menopause is in the news. It's great that women are stepping up and saying no more and finding their voice and being listened to. But it isn't just a women's conversation. It's a global conversation. I keep saying this. I also started to talk about menopause a few years earlier with my friends. I would invite my friends round to my house and we would talk about the different things we were going through. And what we found was that we're all different. Menopause isn't one size fits all. But I think that I also have two young daughters, 25 and 30. And I don't want them to experience menopause in the way that I did at first, because I had anxiety. I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression. And at the time, 2015, no one was making those links, or they weren't saying them out loud. So I thought they were two separate things.
Well, my experience was I was told I had the hormonal profile of a postmenopausal woman at 41. So I was told I'd gone through menopause, which I realise now was complete bollocks, because I hadn't gone through menopause. Under 50 would have been 2 years without a period for me to have gone through menopause. But that was the diagnosis I was given, not that. And there was no medical understanding that on any given day, our hormones can fluctuate to the extent that I could present as having the hormonal profile of a post-menopausal woman. And then, I mean, listeners who listen regularly will know that, I then got my periods back because I changed my diet. I went on a herbal tincture, I sorted out my stress levels, etc. And I got my periods back for a time. But that's it. There is still so little knowledge. I mean, that was a long time ago. That was 13 years ago. But it was, it doesn't seem to be that much better now, or, 5 years ago or 7 years ago, whenever it is, because women are still going to the doctor with issues that people don't put two and two together and make the connection. With hormones at any stage of our life, really. And hormones can have such an impact, can't they, on our overall well-being, our overall health.
I think the difference is that slowly, because we're still a long way off, is that women are going to the doctors armed with information. And I would stress that that's the most important thing, because your doctors, I don't blame the doctors in the sense that they have to take electives and they are trying, unless you have a specific interest in menopause, you're not necessarily going to have that knowledge. You're going to be sitting in front of the computer Googling like we are. But at the same time, what I think is really important that people who are talking about menopause do is encourage women to do their own research, because we're all different. What I say, this is what stopped me in a sense, not stopped me, but held me back. One of the many things that held me back from starting the podcast is that I thought people would expect me to be an expert, and I couldn't get my head round being that person, because I don't like the idea of people expecting me to say, well, do this and do that. And I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tell you what worked for me and what works for me. I'm going to tell you what I've learned from talking to people, and I'm learning more every day. But the biggest thing I'm going to do is saying, do you learn your body? Learn your body. The earlier you start learning your body, the easier it will be. But also talk to people who aren't menopausal. Talk to men. Talk to your kids. Talk to your little boys. Have it in everyday conversation. Talk to your work colleagues. Talk to work. Make sure that they support you. I feel that from my perspective as a black woman, I was concerned that black women were continuing to go to work, go to work virtually, do all the Zoom calls, all the stress that comes with that people did not anticipate, in the middle of trying to deal with racial trauma, racial weathering, and their menopause, experiences and symptoms. And I wanted to empower them to speak up and ask their workplace, how are you going to support me? And at least make sure that they're mindful. Workplaces are becoming more mindful of supporting menopausal women, simply because we've gotten to the point where we're not going to shut up. But there are many women, many people who are in situations where they're scared to speak up because they don't want people to know their age, because they're worried that ageism will also affect their work prospects and their, promotion prospects, as well as the colour of their skin. It's a lot. But I feel that you can hear a story several times from one type of person, and then when you hear a similar story from someone who looks like you, it will resonate. And so that's why there need to be more and more women across the board speaking up, and I want to say speaking their truth, but that sounds so wanky, but that's what I mean. It's just so...
Well, I thought it was interesting that you said, there's been a lot of box ticking, and, I know that. And I know that I am more aware now of looking for diversity amongst my guests. I've always tried to do that, but I try and do it even more now. But you know what, Karen? I struggle to find any non-white women other than black women who will talk to me or who are talking generally. So, it's wonderful what you're doing, and I love it. But I also want, the other voices, and I can't find them. So I will be trying to find, lots of representation, and I can't.
I think it comes down to where you look and how you ask. I would say keep going, ask more, ask on all your platforms, because I think that once we put the intention out there, what we need comes to us. I think that goes across the board. It's great that people's eyes have been opened, and it's great that people, we do tend to look for the default. We do tend to gravitate towards what we're used to, but we have to step outside our comfort zone as well. And I think what's happened is Black Lives Matter I think everything needs to be turned on its head, if I'm honest. And I think that many people are finding that really, really hard because it's uncomfortable. Lots of people posted black squares. Lots of people posted pictures of the books they were reading. We're not interested in that, I'm just not. It doesn't mean anything. Proper, proactive anti-racism work involves looking at yourself, looking at how white privilege, affects you, not even benefits you, sorry. And then having conversations with white friends, with people within your family, and becoming quite uncomfortable. So in terms of finding more diverse people, it's about being intentional all the time. And yes, it's hard, but it's easier if you're comfortable with being uncomfortable. And also people may not want to speak to you, but they might want to speak amongst themselves, So I think more and more women are opening their mouths. I am aware of, that thing where, because you're talking about it and because all the people in your circles are talking about it, you think it's everyone.
I know.
But then you step outside your circle and people are like, what you on about? And I assume, I work freelance, for example. I don't have to speak to anybody at my workplace. I don't. Do you know what I mean? So I am single. My kids have moved out. So when it comes to me saying, make sure you rest and take naps and look after yourself and set boundaries, it's much easier for me than it is for people who are homeschooling, for people who are, are living in big families. Do you see what I mean? So I don't want to gloss over anybody else's experience, but at the same time, I feel that we need to be aware that there is a change and a shift, as Sam Baker says, happening, but not to be complacent and think, oh, it's everywhere, because it isn't.
No, and it needs to be. It really needs to be. I mean, I've talked a lot on this podcast about Black Lives Matter and the impact it had on me. And, I have a mixed race child. So it's very kind of close to home, and he challenges me on my whiteness and my privilege and my middle classness and everything. He challenges me on everything, and I love him for it. But yes, I tend to assume that because I've had this epiphany, that other people have too. And no, they haven't, because it's not on their radar. And I agree with you. I agree. Everything has to turn upside down. Everything. We have to start again. We have to kind of just rethink everything about the way we have conducted our society.
I think people should be angry because we've been lied to. White people have been lied to as well for centuries. And I don't see that anger. I don't see that frustration. I feel that it shouldn't have to be something personal for you to see that somebody else needs your help. And if we diversify much more, then it benefits everybody. There's too much handbag clutching going on, like what's mine is mine, and people not wanting to give things up, because it's the way it's been forever. But it's not serving us. It's not serving us. So it shouldn't just be that we have connections with black folks or we've got black friends or that kind of thing. It needs to be much wider. How sad a world is it that we have to have something called Black Lives Matter? We have to remind people that our lives matter. And how must that affect people who look like me, who look like your son, who look like, who have darker skin? How must that make you feel, seeing that every day? Show us Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. Well, of course they bloody matter.
And in 2020, it's just disgusting, really.
Yeah,
I mean, I am angry about it. Honestly, I really am. And it's all too easy for people to forget, isn't it? We're 6 months on, and have we gone back to normal normal, whatever normal is, in our racial awareness now? Are we not continuing the upset and angst that we maybe felt, in the summer last year, because it's not there in front of us all the time?
I think that it's people wanted a quick fix. People want things quickly. We are used to convenience. There are people who thought they'd read a book and that'd be it, or half a book. I mean, I'm no expert, and this is just these are my personal views. I'm not representing, my entire race. We are not a monolith, but certainly there's a lot of work to be done, and it's going to have to be hard, and people are going to, as I've said, have to feel uncomfortable, and you're going to lose friends. I have people who have gone very quiet. We can't have the same conversations again, But yeah, it's anyway. That's why Menopause Whilst Black exists, because people are intent on keeping white as the default, and I'm not having it.
Good for you. Good for you. That's brilliant. I love it. I think it's fantastic. It's really good. Now, I just wanted to, I know that you had your own sort of midlife and menopausal crisis. I wondered if you could tell me a little bit about what happened to you.
Well, I was a teacher. I was a dance teacher first, and then I moved across to leading, pastoral leader. So I was a head of house and a head of year, coordinator of year. They all have different names. And I started to teach textiles, needlework, whatever you want to call it. It's called textiles technology now. I just blagged my way into this job. Basically, I had been sewing since I was 15, and I was making clothes and all sorts of things, and I had an injury. And so I asked my head teacher at the time if I could stop teaching dance and seek into textiles, and he was like, yeah, sure. In those days, a long time ago. And I loved teaching. I still love teaching, but I didn't love the system. And I thought I'd teach forever. I thought I would teach and then have my little sewing business on the side. I used to make bags out of African print fabric, and then retire and then have grandkids and live happily ever after. But it didn't quite work out that way. And I think the first time I noticed that something was wrong was I started to forget things. And I forgot. I'd always been someone who prided myself on my memory, as a lot of people are. My job was incredibly stressful, and I kept a lot of things in my head. I wrote a lot of lists, but I kept a lot of things in my head in terms of, the nuances between the kids at school and their parents and that kind of thing. And then, I don't know, my kids that's what happened. My girls went to university. My eldest went back to uni after a year internship, and my youngest started. And so I had the house to myself, and it was quiet, and I thought I'd love it, and I hated it within days. And it's, October, and it's getting darker and colder. And in the middle of that, my boiler broke. And I now recognise that not getting it fixed straight away was a measure of how I felt about my own worth. Had my kids been at home, I would have fixed it immediately. But because it was just me, I figured I could just live in one room. I was at work most of the day. I could boil the kettle for hot water. I honestly did not see the point of spending £2,500 on a new boiler. So I didn't, and I survived without heating for 3 months. But in the middle of that, I wasn't happy. I had the space to turn my gaze on myself and look at my life. And I realised that I was going to work, working, coming home, doing more work, going to bed, getting up and doing it all over again. And one particular night, I came home, opened the laptop, did some work, blanket over me, finished at about 8, looked at the clock, thought I'm exhausted, I want to go to bed, thought it's too early to go to bed, and then realised that if I went to bed now, that would just bring the morning closer quicker, and burst into tears. and couldn't stop. And remember sitting where I am now, Googling depression on the NHS website and ticking all the boxes and still not being able to stop crying, like full on sobbing, and finally thinking, this isn't good. I need to speak to somebody. And scrolling in the contacts list in my phone, I didn't want to call my mum because she would worry. Didn't want to call my sister because she lives 80 miles away and she would worry. I wasn't calling my daughters because they would worry. I called a good friend who lives 5 minutes drive away. And normally she would not pick up the phone. Normally her kids pick up the phone or her husband picks up the phone. And that night she picked up the phone and she heard me sobbing and knew something was wrong. Didn't know what it was because I couldn't get it out. And she said, I'm coming. And that was the start. But it was a long road because I then had some time off work, ostensibly trying to get better to go back to work because it didn't occur to me that I wouldn't teach. And that happened a couple of times. And then we got to 2015 and it became clear that I was not going back to work. The doctor diagnosed me with anxiety, depression. I started my hot flushes, but didn't make the connection. And I think I was in denial about menopause, if I'm honest. I've said this several times. I thought that the new boiler that I eventually had put in was broken and I was getting ready to call British Gas and cuss them out because I kept getting hot and I was opening the windows. And then one day it clicked. I was like, you twit. You twit. And I actually burst out laughing because I'm doing my yoga in my bedroom and the window's wide open and I'm sweating. And I'm in downward facing dog and I was like, oh my God, of course. You're menopausal.
The light went off.
And that wasn't until
went on, right?
6 months later, like April. And then I thought, okay, I'll leave work and then everything will get better. I'll be better then. And then I wasn't. My aunt passed away. My dear Aunt Monica became ill suddenly and basically didn't come out of hospital. So I was dealing with a lot, I'm going to say. And I wasn't sure what the future held. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I concentrated on getting better. The doctor mentioned antidepressants. And I said, thanks, but no thanks. It's not that I don't want them. No, it's not that I'm against them. It's that I want to see if there's anything else I can do first. So I went to a herbalist. My brother's a Buddhist. He mentioned mindful meditation. So I half read John Kabat-Zinn's book, Full Catastrophe Living. I haven't finished it. It's massive. It's a great doorstop. But what I read was really good. I recommend it, but it's very expensive, so try and get it at half price. Try and get it, on eBay or something. What else did I do? I went into therapy. Big fat deal. I went into therapy for what I thought would be a few months and ended up being 3 years and was the best money I've ever spent and the best gift I've ever given myself. And I recommend it to everybody.
Was that the first time you'd done therapy?
I had done therapy on the NHS for 8 weeks and it was just not good.
It's not very good on the NHS.
It wasn't good. I had someone I didn't really take to. And to be fair, I wasn't ready. I had put therapy off for a while. I knew it was going to be expensive. I wanted a black therapist. I just didn't realise why. And I didn't realise how important that would be until it did become important. And I'm also a strong believer that when you get silent and when you get quiet, the answers come. So I wasn't going to rush it. I don't believe that life is supposed to be difficult. I believe that it's difficult because we push against what's supposed to happen. And so I'm lucky, I suppose, that I was given the gift of time even though it didn't feel like it at the time, it felt like shit. You know, I was given the gift of time, and I'm grateful to that. And even then, I mean, I went into therapy, and my therapist was great. She was just like, "Well, you're really good at telling a story, but how do you feel?" And I was like, I honestly had no idea. I'd spent decades masking my feelings. I was very adept at putting a brave face on and being the strong black woman, or strong, being all the things for everybody else. So I'd never been introspective. Even my journals I read back are stories. They're not, I've written them as if I expect to read them or someone else to read them. It's fascinating. So my therapist allowed me to feel, which was really hard and not fun. And I haven't ruled out going back, but it was definitely a turning point for me. And I'm very lucky that I was able to access therapy, that I had the money to pay for it, and that I could find someone who had a similar story to my own, I would say.
I know therapy can be very expensive, but I agree with you. It is such a powerful investment if you get the right person. I've been in and out of therapy all my life. But it's always helped. And in fact, I recently realized that I even got down to the stage where I would just see my therapist sort of when I needed her, because she knew so much about me. I'd go in for a little top up every 3 months or something like that, you know, because that was enough. And then she retired, and I went about 4 or 5 years without any therapy. And guess what? I got into trouble. Because, as you say, we're so used to doing everything for everybody else and putting our own needs on the back burner and not prioritizing ourselves and ignoring the signs, because, you know, you did it, didn't you? And it all piled up eventually, and then the sort of dam burst with the boiler going.
And I'd had, you know, your body has a way of stopping you in your tracks if you don't listen. And I had hints, all that I had been in a 20-year relationship, and I'd split with my partner in 2006. And really and truly, I should have gone into therapy then. But what I did is I put my kids in therapy. That's what happened. Because I focused on them. But we do that because society teaches us that is value. We are valued. Women are valued for our ability to have babies or look a certain way, and our ability to put our needs last so that we can help everybody but ourselves. So, of course, by the time we get to our 40s and our 50s, if you haven't addressed it, the shit well and truly hits the fan, and it comes out mentally, and it can affect you physically. And I happen to have had both. And since I left teaching, I had a moment where I couldn't walk. I have a beautiful, stylish cane, of course, that I had to use for about 6 or 8 months, because I was not listening. I still wasn't listening. I was doing some things, but not enough. And when I became freelance, I had no idea how to be freelance. So I just thought we worked all the time, you know. So I got stopped, and it enabled me to put proper self-care in place, which means I don't look at emails or answer emails on Sundays, for example. And I allow myself to get bored on Sundays, you know, and I wake up thinking, what shall I do today? Which I had never done. It's quite fun, actually. I do recommend it.
Good for you. Good for you. You burnt out, didn't you? That's what happened.
Oh, absolutely.
You just burnt out.
Absolutely.
Which so many of us do, because we're running on empty. And what I wanted to, and I asked your permission before we hit record, that actually we rescheduled this podcast recording, didn't we? Because last week you were not in a good place and you said, you know, I just don't want to do it. And I wanted to just talk about that and raise it, because you gave yourself permission to do that. You didn't just soldier on. You had learnt to listen and to take action. And I think so many of us don't give ourselves permission, do we?
Not at all. We don't. It's such a simple thing, but we don't do it because we don't realise we can. I realise that one of the reasons that I got to a point in my previous career was that I thought I didn't have a choice. I was being asked to say things I didn't believe in. I was, but also I felt like I was stuck, not just in the job, because I love, as I say, I loved teaching, but it was, I'd got a massive mortgage. My kids were at uni. They weren't at uni at the time, but, they're young, they've got demands. I had responsibilities. So I felt like I didn't have a choice. I had no boundaries whatsoever. Whereas now, having a choice and knowing you have a choice is really important. And the first person you start with is yourself. So if I say I'm going to do something, yes, I'm going to do it. But if I wake up, my sleep, like many people, is all over the place at the moment. That it might be menopause, but I don't think it is. I think it's COVID. I think it's anxiety. I think it's, the world and the fact that we happen to be in a global pandemic. So I'm cutting myself some slack with that. But I will say that had I felt that I would have to get up and do things that I don't want to do, then when you do things and you resent doing it, it comes out physically. If you do things with your full heart because you want to be there, then you're much more likely to have a bit of fun as well. I think often we, women in particular, I don't think it's a man thing, do things because we've always done them or out of duty or because we said we would. You're allowed to say, actually, you know what? I don't have the bandwidth for this. I can't do this. When I started my podcast, I was inundated with requests to do things, give my opinion, do lives, appear on podcasts. And it made me really upset because I thought, oh my God, I have to say yes, but I didn't want to. And I had a conversation with a very good family friend, Nat Lou, who runs Baggage Reclaim. Fantastic website about relationships, all sorts of relationships. And she said, you do know you don't have to do that. You can say no. You're allowed to say no. And it hadn't occurred to me. So now I believe that if you say no to somebody or people treat you the way you let them treat you. So if you say, I can't do this, and they don't understand, then maybe they're not supposed to be in your life, I knew it wouldn't be a problem and I felt bad about it, but I had to honour myself first so that I could come back and be a better guest for you. And I think that sometimes we need to remind ourselves, and it's not easy. I often have to see somebody else's Instagram post that gives me that says you're allowed to rest before I do it. Every day is I'm learning. I'm not fixed. Growth is an ongoing thing, isn't it? I cannot be of service in any good way to anybody else if I am not looking after myself. And that's part of that, is boundaries. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. It's very powerful and it's very, very good advice. Really good advice. It's so important. You started out talking about, the need to listen to our bodies, listen to how we're feeling and take action accordingly. It's so, so important.
I think it's hard too. I think I've unlearned so much over the past 6 years. Oh my gosh. Because our natural instinct is to do all the things. I have a situation at the moment where somebody close to me is very sick and I want to fix it. And I can't, to the point where it doesn't serve me. I can't fix this situation. This is a situation this person has to go through on their own. I can support them, but I can't fix it. And I think that as women, we have, by the time you get to your midlife, you've had 40, 50 years on this planet, you've got a lot of habits And those habits are habits that aren't necessarily ones that are good for you in your current incarnation, because we change. You know, the thing is that sometimes we feel that we have to be the same person. We try to fit into the same clothes. We try to have a hairstyle the same way. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't work because we're not that person, you know? And I think that sometimes can make us quite ill or make us quite upset, not being able to wear certain things, or the fact that our waist is getting bigger, but we're just different. We're just different.
And we're not worse. We're just different.
We're just different.
We're
and
evolving.
it's okay. You know, in fact, it's more than okay. I think, personally, menopause has been my gift, if I'm honest. And I feel that growing older I think it's brilliant, but I think it needs a rebrand, because younger people look at older people and think, oh my God, I don't want to be that age. That's because when they Google, you know, menopause or older people, you've got people with Zimmer frames and sticks and wearing slacks and those funny shoes. And
Yes, I know.
You know, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that there are so many of us living different lives because we're all different. You know,
and we don't want to be beige.
I don't want to be beige. Beige has its place. It's a very classic colour. You know, however, not all the bloody time, or lavender.
I don't want a beige life.
Yeah,
no, I don't want that.
Yeah.
But I also have this theory that it's as the estrogen goes, because I like to think of estrogen as the biddable hormone.
Okay.
It's the one that made us behave. It's the one that made us nurture and you know, think about other people first. And as it diminishes within us, obviously we still have a different kind of estrogen as we go into our later life. But as the biddable bit goes, there's a lot more of the, well, fuck this, I'm not doing that, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Which is so empowering, I think.
Yeah, I agree. It is empowering if you welcome it. There are many women who find it hard to welcome it. Yes. And there are many women who find it hard because their partners find it hard, or they're scared of not being seen as valuable anymore. You know, you become the invisible woman. I'm just not ready. I don't think I'll ever be ready to be invisible. You know, I have
to be invisible.
and just you know, with 40, 50 years of experience and knowledge, this is the time when society needs to celebrate and lift up. And I mean Western society, because there are other cultures that revere people as they get older, because getting older is a privilege. And I say this with my whole chest. I'm 58 years old and I know so many people who did not make it this far. And so, you know, the aging process and aging, it's something that I think we need to be encouraged in the Western culture to celebrate and honour every day. And that's in the workplace, that's in business, you know, and women in particular, because we're bloody brilliant. I know that's not really a business plan, but it works for me. Why should I hire you? Well, I'm bloody brilliant. That'll work. Hired.
Well, there's a reason why what I do is called Magnificent Midlife, because I really do believe that we come into our magnificence. That is at the core of my belief, and I want women to realise that. I don't want women to cling on to this idea that somehow they were better when they were younger, because they weren't. They weren't better. They were different.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. And it is, once, I think that's what, when I was able to step out of the career I had before and give myself time to really go, you know, get silent and allow what was coming next to evolve, in a sense, it meant that my style changed. It meant that I fell back in love with fashion, with creativity. It meant I discovered where you're happy, where you make conscious clothing choices to lift your mood. And it meant that I could finally uncover my voice and start to share my experience of aging, my experience of menopause, all of those things with other women, so that people, young people coming up, my kids, Black women, people are encouraged, feel the strength to do the same thing. I know that when I see certain women who look like me doing things that I want to do, I think, oh, they can do that. I can do that. You can't be what you can't see, and menopause has given me that. I couldn't have done it without going into a horrible time and not, dumbing down depression. It's not fun. And coming out the other side, and not rushing back to be the person I was. My body is different. My skin is different. My outlook is different. I'm a different person, but I'm still me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Magnificent Midlife Podcast. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, share it, and leave me a review wherever you're listening. It really helps me get the message out. You can find out more information about this episode in the show notes at magnificentmidlife.com. That's also where you'll find strategies, support, and resources to help make your midlife magnificent. Get clarity on how to make the most of your next chapter. Help me change the world, one magnificent midlife woman at a time.